So basically, when Raj contacted me on whether I could contribute to that session, we were discussing a little bit how we could do that. And then I thought, let me try to lead you a little bit through the process of where blockchain applications are at the example of the energy market, and then to discuss a little bit the outlook and current hurdles. So as Raj said, I'm a senior lecturer at ESMT. You see here, we are a business school in Berlin. And I had a life before ESMT, so I was working 5 years in industry, 5 years as a consultant, and 5 years independently advising small and medium enterprises for private equity. And since 2002, 2003, I'm with ESMT. Now, I got in contact with blockchain technology in 2015. And then that sounded always very interesting. And the question was, but what can one do with that technology in a business context? So basically what we did in 2016, we started a poll in Germany and we asked energy executives in 2016 about what might be the role of blockchain technology in the future. And you can see here the structure of the survey respondents, so from big players to small players, and the whole value chain more or less represented. And when we looked at the results, we found that at those days, about 80% said, well, this is either game changer or dissemination likely. And we did other polls in other industries, and we basically find the same result there. And then when we asked them, well, how do we deal with that technology? You can see that there are basically two kinds of strategies. One is I try to test and experiment with the technology, so about 50%. And the other 50% say, well, we wait and see, we let the others make the mistakes, and then we overtake them. In a second step, we asked them those days, where do you see the applications? And when analyzing these applications, we found that basically you can think of blockchain applications from a business perspective in two regards. One is simply, you ask yourself, can I reduce process costs with the help of this technology? And when we looked at the answers of our participants, we find here the bigger the bubble, the more that application was mentioned. So for example, we can save costs in billing, we can save costs in metering and data transfer, we can save costs in mobility, e-charging and stuff like that. And the second idea you can think of when trying to apply blockchain in your business context is, in a way, how can I use that technology to organize networks? And here the energy executive mentioned decentralized generation, peer-to-peer trading, trading platforms. And I would like to take that categorization to lead you a little bit through the business models, the applications that were developed thereon, and how we stand right now. So the first idea was basically by François Sonnet, and he had the idea, in the energy market, you have an issue of proof of origin. Is that electricity really renewables based or not? So his idea was, whenever you produce solar electricity, this will be connected to the blockchain, and then you earn solar coins as a proof of origin, and then you can use that for loyalty systems, for payment, and so on. And you might say this is a great idea, but of course the downside is, how can I integrate that in a broader sense and not only as a loyalty system? So ideally, one could think of that might be linked to regulatory efforts, which is not the case yet. So that was François Sonnet. Another idea was with Christoph Jentsch, and he had the idea, we set up a blockchain-based e-charging platform where we can connect private e-charging stations and public e-charging stations. And with Slockit, they developed a lock, and this lock is connected to the blockchain on Ethereum. So whenever you use that, it's completely clear when you are using it and when you are not using it. And with such a platform, you can save infrastructure costs, or you can also sell your excess electricity to other market players and so on. So here, e-charging as process optimization. Another one is a project called Tendermint. And Tendermint was the IT platform, the blockchain platform for Enerchain. And Enerchain and Michael Mertz had the idea that now we use this Tendermint permissioned platform to enable peer-to-peer wholesale trading. So right now you have to go through a wholesale trader, and then the trader is connecting supply and demand and charges a fee therefore. So what Michael Mertz did with Ponton, he set up this peer-to-peer platform, and here you can see the companies that joined that platform. Now the question is the blockchain platform fast enough for very short wholesale trading? And that is not the case. So what he did in that example, he simply used blockchain as a communication platform. So whenever you are logged on that platform, you see supply and demand, and then you still have to do your trades and link it to your current network. While doing so, he is claiming that participants can save process costs of up to 90%. So here you can see that blockchain is used not as the trading platform, but is used as a communication platform. And the reason for that is not only the speed. In that case, the reason for that is also that if you want to participate as a trader, then you have to undergo certain regulations. And if you would want to do that, that kills the incentive for all these different parties then. So that is another use case of process optimization, saving up to 90% of costs for peer-to-peer wholesale trading. Another example is here from Jojo Hubbard, Electron, which is a London-based startup. And they used blockchain solutions to allow for flexibility markets. So they had several projects, and each project they did, so to say, tailor-made. One was the Recorder in Great Britain, a network innovation allowance, where it's basically you have created a shared asset register for energy asset data whenever you want to change your suppliers in the energy market. This is a very cumbersome process, and to exchange information in there. And with that common layer, you can streamline that process. You can reduce the hurdle of that information usage to one single point. Another one is here where they had a business energy industrial strategy flexibility competition for a marketplace platform. And another one is here, a pilot and demonstration program for the Federal Office of Energy, where they set up intraday changes of forecasts of consumption and generation. Whenever you do that, you find that basically what Jojo Hubbard was doing is basically developing a platform on a blockchain as a service model, right? So you had several projects, and by doing that, you develop a platform which is, in a case, an operating unit, and where you then build different applications that enhance the value of that platform. Another example I wanted to give you is Energy Web. Energy Web Foundation did actually the other way around. So basically, what they did is they set up first the platform, and that platform is a permissioned platform, and they integrated here small players and medium and small players and big players as well, and they developed this energy web chain. On this energy web chain, you might say this is like an operating platform. Then you have now different applications, what we heard, like for example, the Energy Web Origin. This is the idea of François Sanet, or the Energy Web Flex. This is the idea of Jojo Hubbard. And there are also trading applications there as well. So they started from a platform model. They have now a test network, and in this test network, they have hackathons where basically everybody is invited to participate in that network, to test their applications, and then to run it. And they are currently now also involved in a project with the German Energy Agency, DENA, where they now put also the real asset registry in Germany on that platform, so to make that a real life application now at this stage. Now, when we look at these developments, what can we see? Well, first you would argue we started with transactions platform. You might say the process applications. And I gave you an example of energy in the energy market, where you simply try one single process and try to reduce the process costs because you are cutting out intermediaries and can serve that with less cost. in the IT market, we know that actually from Airbnb or Uber. A second thing that is developing, we see blockchain as a service. And I gave you the example of Electron, UK-based, which is in the energy market, but we also know blockchain as a service from many other IT incumbents, be that IBM, they offer, for example, TradeLens with together with Maersk, but also SAP, Wipro, you can name them. And when we look at these developments, we find that basically where the trend is going to is so-called innovation and hybrid platforms, meaning a little bit the idea of iOS developer, where basically in the Apple world, you have a transaction platform, but you have also apps that you can choose on. And it's both so an innovation platform and a transaction platform. So we see that in the IT world here with Red Hat and Linux, or here in the energy world with Energy Web, which is then in addition token-based. Now, let us have a little bit an outlook on what might be next. When we look at the blockchain in perspective, what we find is in terms of regulation, that's usually a big issue. And in the beginning, the startup said, well, you know, the whole regulation has to be turned upside down, and because now everything is decentrally possible. Now we see that these startups recognize that our legislation has some use. Yes, know your customer, anti-money laundering legislation is useful. So they try, of course, also now to comply to the legislation. The other trend that we see is that the regulatory bodies are also now aware of these blockchain applications. And you simply might say it took them 2 or 3 years to understand this technology. And now they are also allowing, for example, debt certificate issuing on the blockchain and stuff like that. So they are aware of that and trying to find a solution of the open spaces. A second trend that we see, and I think that is very important if we think about implementation, is this blockchain as a service. If we look at blockchain as a service from IBM, SAP, Wipro, Billion, and so on, basically, and we have these permissioned blockchains, we see that there are no regulatory hurdles whatsoever. This is simply a decentralized IT solution, for example, in the case of IBM and TradeLens, where you have to pay then a subscription fee to access the information of that supply chain, and where you might pay an additional trade fee whenever you do a trade or sell something. So that you can do without any regulatory hurdles. And that might be also a reason why that is a one-way solution where dissemination is rather more likely than when you have permissionless. Now, a third trend is on tokenization, because when we look at back 1 year ago, you might have said that tokenization is dead. Now, in the last months, we saw Bitcoin and Ether and all the other tokens rising again. And that might be also due to the Corona crisis, which helped us to understand that, first of all, the current banking system might printing money, so supply is going up. And now when we try to compare that to Bitcoin, where we know this is only 21 million Bitcoins, then the attractiveness of Bitcoin certainly becomes even more aware. And we can see the rise of Bitcoin as a view on Bitcoin as digital gold. A second thing is, which is going on, and I'm sure you are aware of that, that Ethereum, for example, changed their validation algorithm from proof of work to proof of stake. And Polkadot is doing that the same. So therefore, all these smart contract solutions, which had in the past the problem of scalability, have increased their scalability or have set the groundwork to increase scalability. And with that, we can assume that dissemination will be much more likely, as in the case, for example, of the permission blockchains. And the last thing is, I think that we will see these race for hybrid platforms on an industry level. I mentioned the TradeLens from IBM. I mentioned the Energy Web token as an industry application. And we will see here that platforms will develop beyond the finance market, but also now into energy market, supply chain market, insurance market, streaming markets, and so on. Now, this sounds all gloomy. The question is, well, what are the hurdles? So let's have a focus on the hurdles. Why is it not taking off yet, or why is it not taking off faster? And I would say there are 4 layers of hurdles. One is the blockchain technology. So the blockchain technology in the past, and I mentioned that with Ethereum 2.0 or Polkadot right now, in the past had been very slow with this proof of work concept. Now we see that change to proof of stake, we see that change to parachains, to sharding, and therefore we can expect the scalability issue to be solved. So you might say that still takes some time to set up the blockchain applications, the business models behind that, but we might see a lot of traction in here. And that is true for permissionless, but of course now in permissioned anyway. The second hurdle is company knowledge, because most managers still do not know the blockchain technology. It's still linked to Bitcoin, it's still linked to money laundering, it might be an undecent technology, which is not the case at all. So therefore what we see, and we do that also at the business school, we teach many managers about this blockchain technology, not from an IT perspective, but that they can understand and use that technology to their benefit. What I said, process cost optimization or setting up platforms. But even if we have understood that, and I mentioned that in this trend that we now go to hybrid platforms, the next question is, as a company, we want to set up platforms then. And to set up a platform is a huge thing, right? I mean, first of all, you need to give up some power, because on a platform, you have to invite other players, suppliers, customers, might be even competitors to join so that you reach industry acceptance. And if you think about that, this is not something you simply can do from the innovation department. This is something where the management board of a company has to be behind and trying to set up that model. So let's assume we can do that, and that is usually some time and takes some time to get the traction. Then the last layer of implementation hurdle is tokenization acceptance. We did interviews within a project where we involved. It's called 80block. It's a project for the German Ministry of Economics. And there we asked the players, well, where are the hurdles of blockchain applications? And some guy told me, you know, I have never seen a CFO who wants to have a token on his balance sheet. So you might say that from a CFO perspective, there has been a lot of sentiment. Here's my timer that my 18 minutes are over. A lot of sentiment against to have a tokenization on the balance sheet. When we watch now some news, we see that companies actually started in the last months changing that perspective. And they basically did their cash management away from the dollar to Bitcoin. And now they find that as a software company, they find basically that the software company now, if you look on the balance sheet, has a higher share, higher value based on the Bitcoin than on doing the software. So you might also say that based on that one, many things are changing, and you would argue that tokenization acceptance will grow potentially slowly, potentially steadily. But we can see that in all these 4 layers, implementation hurdles, which are still there, it's quite a lot of work to do. But you might say it's worth proceeding when you look at the opportunities that blockchain technology offers for you.